Bitcoin beats credit cards hands down. Credit cards take a day, sometimes 2 to clear. Bitcoin takes a minute, maybe 3 to clear.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into CrushTheStreet.com. I'm Kenneth Amaduri, and I'm joined today with Paul Rosenberg, a man who knows a lot about a lot of things. And I like talking to these people who are encyclopedias, who just know a lot, who've dipped their toes into many aspects of things and just have a lot of knowledge under his belt. And he's got a repertoire of published titles, and his website is freemansperspective.com. Paul, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, hey, Paul, we're going to talk about Bitcoin today, and we've been covering that a lot here at Crush the Street, and it's hitting all-time highs again and again and again. And every time I refresh my Coinbase app or visit Bitstamp, Bitcoin is higher and higher. And full disclosure, I'm in it to win it, and just like my friend Adam Meister has told us on a recorded call here, you know, we're going to hold it at least until the next halving. I'm doing the same. But to be honest, it's starting to feel a bit like a bubble craziness right now, with prices rising every single day in just a month. I mean, we're just shy of a double here. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, you know, it's hard to say with Bitcoin because it's new and there are a lot of things going on at the same time. You know, it has gone up and then dropped before, actually very, very repetitively and consistently. Even if it dropped tomorrow, I wouldn't suggest that people get rid of it. Bitcoin has a gigantic upside. Just let's take one example, and that is competing with credit cards. It is, I don't know what the numbers are currently, but Bitcoin is something like 1,000th of the credit card transactions that go on every day, maybe less, maybe 1/10,000th. Bitcoin beats credit cards hands down. Credit cards take a day, sometimes 2 to clear. Bitcoin takes a minute, maybe 3 to clear. Bitcoin is just about free. Credit cards charge 2, 3, 4% on every single transaction. There's no middleman to create complications for you. So Bitcoin is just better. So the upside of Bitcoin is, you know, really, really big, and that's just counting credit cards. You know, we're talking about international transactions, of competing with Western Union and those things. Bitcoin has a gigantic upside. So, you know, what will happen? I don't know. There's also the issue that there are big players, people who bought Bitcoin, you know, when it was $1, and you know they want to cash out from time to time. And sometimes, if too many of them try to cash out, you know, when the price is up nice and high, well, they distort the market because it's not a big market. At least not it's not big compared to, you know, dollars, euros, and yen.
Of course.
So there's all those things happening. Personally, I prefer Bitcoin to just go up nice and gently over a long period of time. But you know, I don't know. It may be $1,000 next month, or it may be, you know, 800 again. It's really hard for me to tell.
Sure. Well, one of the criticisms for Bitcoin is, how do we know this is the end-all be-all for digital currencies? Obviously, a lot of them are out there. And if it isn't the end-all be-all, can we trust putting our wealth in it long term? And I know right now Bitcoin is making gold look bad at the moment, but to be fair, gold has been a store of value, tried and tested for thousands of years. Any thoughts on this? Sure.
There's really not a lot of competition between gold and Bitcoin. Again, the market is so gigantic. Gold is great. You know, gold, like you say, it's a store of value. It will be a store of value for the foreseeable future. I think gold is a wonderful, wonderful commodity, a wonderful thing to own. The problem with gold is, you know, try to take it across, you're likely to have a very bad day. So, and you know, Bitcoin just flies across borders, so they're irrelevant. So gold is good, and Bitcoin is good. And Bitcoin, you know, is backed by mathematics. that mathematics are built into the fabric of the universe. So it's not just a trivial little ephemera. Bitcoin has math behind it. That's significant.
Well, let's talk about market action. Obviously, it's moving up quite a bit at the moment. And in your opinion, and just in general, would you say that a lot of this exuberance is just speculation, and are we pricing in a lot of future growth in Bitcoin at these levels with people just buying into it and the price going up the way it is? Is it getting a little ahead of itself?
It may be. It may be getting a little ahead, but it's really hard to tell. What happens if, let's say, the people in Venezuela decide that, gee, things are really going badly here. We got to get our money out of here somehow. Let's use Bitcoin. Well, all of a sudden, that's a big spike in Bitcoin, and it's legitimate. It's not just wishful thinking. The same thing that happens in Argentina from time to time, and so on. Cyprus a few years ago. There are really good reasons to get into Bitcoin, and if one half of the people took advantage of that, Bitcoin would be through the sky. So, there's legitimate reasons for it to go up for a long time.
You brought up an interesting point, and you're talking about geopolitical and just financial problems that exist around the world. And, we point out and we talk a lot here about, price suppression of precious metals and the competition of gold and silver with just fiat currencies and the dollar. And many are worried that the government is going to clamp down and put the crackdown on Bitcoin. But also people have said that the more the government tries to do that, the more Bitcoin thrives. And it's almost like this chicken that the government is playing, or the powers that be, or whatever you want to call it, with digital currencies, because they can't go at it too hard because it's the internet. It's almost unmanageable. You can't control it. And that's just an interesting dynamic that Bitcoin is bringing into the current system that we have. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's just like you say, they're kind of damned if you don't. And Bitcoin, it's really important to understand, Bitcoin is what I say from outside. Bitcoin was not created by financial. They had a great idea for a new currency. Bitcoin was created by punks. These are confirmed outsiders, people who said that the system, particularly in this case the system of currency that we have now, is flawed, it is morally flawed, it is technically flawed, it is something that we should evolve past, and these are the people who created Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is a very different thing, and the status quo, the system that is, really doesn't know what to do with it. There are attacks they may make someday. I suppose that at some point, if Bitcoin, succeeds according to my happy dreams, central bankers will just go, ape poop crazy and try to do something to kill it. But it all remains to be seen. It's not a dull field, that's for sure.
Sure. There was this article that came out and it went super viral, and it talked about in prior years, or I forget exactly if it was 2015 or 2016, only 800 people reported their digital currency transactions on their taxes, which is nothing compared to the amount of people that are actually transacting in Bitcoin. And it would be a nightmare, a logistical nightmare for the government to start to go after people. I've never traded Bitcoin. I've just bought. Just for anyone else that is out there listening to my call, who's but the thing is it would be just such a nightmare to actually go after people and do this. And I'm just wondering, how is this like the Achilles heel for the system? Can this expose so many things that otherwise are being masked by the mainstream media and or just the price suppression of precious metals and to just support the status quo?
Okay. It's interesting that, 800 some people are all that have reported, because the reporting requirements are there's no one really knows what they are. Now there's some new thing that they put out that they said you got to report it like commodity transactions. Well, that means you're supposed to declare your profit every time you buy a cup of coffee with Bitcoin. It's functionally impossible. It's okay if you buy, 1,000 Bitcoins and hold them for, 5 years and then sell. But if you actually use the stuff, which is what it's designed for, it's impossible to do that. So that's, the issue. And the question you have is, what does this do to the system? If they can't go after this, if it's too big to go after, they're in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Well, that's really what Bitcoin is designed to be. It's supposed to be an outsider system that functions on a different model and that is not compatible with the existing model. That's how it was designed. That's the way it's been built. That's the way it started. And the system's going to have a very hard time with it.
Yeah, I suppose if the government were too friendly towards Bitcoin, it might lose some of its appeal, to people, and people are finding Bitcoin because it's a solution to the problems that currently exist in the system. Paul,
right. I mean,
go ahead.
Their situation is that if they make a big stink over Bitcoin, a lot of people find out about it who might not have found out about it otherwise, and they go, what is this? What does it do? You mean I can just send $200 to my cousin in Manila and not have to pay $20 or $30 every time? He gets it all? Really?
Yeah.
And then they're in.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of research on just, silver and the history of money and how the governments have demonetized real money over the years. Took the gold out of money, let's say, and the silver out of money, and they stole wealth essentially from the people, revalued the wealth. And I'm just curious, how is it possible for them to demonetize Bitcoin when people start, and as they already are seeing it as money? I mean, is there really anything they can do in similar fashion to control it and to demonetize the thought that Bitcoin is money?
They really can't. The genie is out of the bottle. The battle is over. What they can do is to go Joe Stalin on the Bitcoin community and, start, throwing people in cages and shooting them and things like that. And that's not going to be very easy to do. And even if you make it totally illegal, they tried that with marijuana too. And, you can still get marijuana in pretty much every city in the civilized world and then some. If you write people to ask, and the odds of getting in trouble are not too far above nil. So Bitcoin can always go that model. It's not going to go away.
Sure. Paul, I want to ask you about these other alternative currencies. We don't have to get into a detailed discussion into them, but I think a lot of the excitement that's surrounding Litecoin, Ethereum, Monero, Dash, and some of these others that are just going crazy is just a spillover from what is happening in Bitcoin. And one of the concerns, I think, for people is that Bitcoin can have competition. And if it does have competition, can people really trust storing their wealth in Bitcoin versus an infinite amount of other potential digital currencies that, who knows, maybe one day takes it over? So any thoughts on these?
Sure. We want competition. It's a good thing. People who are in Bitcoin should not worry about it. Litecoin, some of the other ones, they're fine. I want them to succeed. I want them to do well. The market, again, is thousands of times bigger than we have now. Bitcoin by itself will just can have a hard time taking on it all. We need other ones. And The other coins, the altcoins, at least those of them, most of them are going to go away. Most of them will vanish in a year or whatever. But the altcoins keep Bitcoin honest. Because there are all kinds of infighting in the Bitcoin insider groups. What kind of updates should we do on this, and how should we change the block size? And there's all kinds of fights going on among techie guys. If they don't behave like adults and scale Bitcoin properly, the altcoins are going to do it right. Some of them are going to do it right and eat Bitcoin's lunch. So these are the guys that keep Bitcoin honest. So, there are a lot of them. Ethereum is interesting because it has its own capabilities built in to automate contracts and make what we used to call smart contracts. That's a really nice little feature to have. It's not, you can't use it for everything, but it's really a nice feature to have. And Litecoin has done a very respectable job. There's others. I don't really keep up with them all because it's almost impossible. But we want them. We want them there. And listen, someday if one of them does everything better than Bitcoin, then we'll start switching over.
Interesting. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around that concept, though. Is it if you compare Bitcoin to gold, though? I think people just have the confidence in gold that, hey, it was around for 5,000 years and I can buy my gold and fall into a 100-year-long coma and trust that it'll still be there, right? And with Bitcoin, we don't have that sort of history. We don't know if there's going to be another competitive digital currency that takes it over. And you're saying we can switch over, but that's a problem for people who are storing their wealth. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Well, yeah, but this is an old human problem. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. I mean, not even gold. I love gold, and I'm not trying to critique it at all. But who knows what happens in 20 or 50 or 100 years from now? We could, find an asteroid made, of 10 cubic kilometers of solid gold, and all of a sudden the price of gold,
True.
is lower than copper.
Like the Twilight Zone.
So, there's always adaptations that have to be done. And if there's a switch over from Bitcoin to, super duper coin someday in the future, it's not going to happen in a day. You'll have weeks, months, years to make the switch, and Bitcoin isn't going to go away anyway. It doesn't mean, the altcoins could outpace Bitcoin, and Bitcoin could still go up in value consistently.
That's a good point.
This is a giant pot, a giant pot. So Bitcoin could become the third or fourth or fifth currency and still be $100,000 per coin someday.
You made a price target. You made a price. You maybe not a forecast, but you quantified Bitcoin at $100,000. Are you optimistic that, we're realistically headed, much higher than these numbers? Is this the early part of the game, in your opinion, for Bitcoin?
Oh, yeah. This is definitely the early part of the game. If you look at Bitcoin, compare the market cap from Bitcoin to any major currency, and it's still tiny. But the thing is, it's better. It's demonstrably better in just about every way you could want. The only things that keeps the fiat currencies in place is, let's just be honest about it, institutionalized violence or the threat thereof. And Bitcoin doesn't need that. Bitcoin really just provides a better currency. And so, how far does it go? I don't know. It won't be a dull ride, that's for damn sure. And how high is up? Really high.
Paul, many of the gold community has been marginalized by the mainstream media as, libertarians, nuts in many situations. Does Bitcoin have this same obstacle where a lot of people who have gotten into Bitcoin are people who've questioned the system, questioned the establishment? And I'm wondering, is that going to be a hurdle for Bitcoin, getting over that stigma of just being some extreme ideology and having to break through that? Because similar to the problems we see with gold?
Honestly, I hope that the outsider philosophy remains in Bitcoin forever. I don't want it to compromise with the existing system, because the existing system is immoral. It is morally flawed. Bitcoin, while it's still run by and used by flawed human beings, we're not going to expect perfection out of it, but it is a system that's honest. And I don't want it to change its nature. I don't want people to say, well, it's okay, it's been approved by the Association of blah, blah, blah. I don't want that. Now, this is my personal opinion. I think Bitcoin is really, really supremely important because it allows a space for the future to be born.
Wow.
The fiat currencies, these currencies of the system, the financial hierarchies that be, if you will, they enforce the past. I mean, they enforce the past. Bitcoin is a chance for the future to take shape. I tell people we've been living with space-age technology under Bronze Age rulership systems. It's time to move on beyond them. Now, this is a whole other subject of its own, but things like Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is a big one, give us a chance for the future to get a little toehold in our world and begin to take shape.
Wow. Paul Rosenberg. Paul, if people want to learn more about what you do, I mean, please tell them about your website. And I want to thank you for coming on the line and sharing this knowledge with us. Really just so much to chew on for the rest of the day regarding Bitcoin, especially if we continue to see it go. I'm hoping we see 2,000 here. I'm getting, I got my carne asada, my chips and dip. I'm watching this as if it's the Super Bowl. So some final words here.
Sure. Well, if anybody wants to find my material, go to freemansperspective.com, just the way it sounds, freemansperspective.com. And we have free articles, and we run a monthly subscription newsletter, which, pays the bills. So guaranteed, not boring content.
All right, Paul. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on the line with me today, and you have a great day.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.